Okay, hello. We are live. We are live. We're live. Welcome to Live Stream Friday. Live Stream Friday after a long live streaming day yesterday on Thursday. If you were able to join, thank you so much for part 1 and part 2 of reading through Blake Lively's response to the Baldoni and Wayfarer motion for summary judgment. And today we are continuing this process. I think that I totally underestimated the effort required to go through this document. It's only 72 pages, the memo of law specifically for the motion of summary judgment or for summary judgment. And I haven't done this kind of long live streaming before. I know some other content creators do it all the time. Mad respect for them. I'm building up my stamina. But thankfully, to help me out with building up my stamina, I've got some caffeine, got some coffee. So yes, I'm caffeinated. I am determined to get through this memo of law document with you. Because still, I come back to, I know this is a little bit of a longer process and it's different than what I usually do on my channel. And I would be doing this anyway. I'd be going through this document, reading it. And so it's just a lot more enjoyable, to be honest, to not do that alone, to do that with you. So we are going to dive into it and hopefully get through the rest of this document. And I'm curious what's next for you on your list of things that you're trying to review for the case. For me, I think some of the unsealed depositions are intriguing. I'm very curious about that. It sounds like there's some new tea, some new info to explore there. So maybe that would be next on the docket to think about reviewing. But today we're still continuing document 1070, as you can see on my screen. And hopefully I'm not muted. I don't think I'm muted. Part 1, if you go back and watch that for this live stream coverage, just go to minute 4 minutes in, 16 seconds or so. I'm on mute for the first few minutes. Okay. And then part 2 is a little bit better. And today we're doing even better. So happy Friday. Let's get into this. I think where we left it off is page 53 here in the document. And we were just about to go into this section. One of the other reasons why I really wanted to finish this review with you live is because most of what we covered yesterday in the live streams had to do with the SH claims. And we were just starting to get into more of the retaliation claims, which I'm really curious about because that seems to have gotten so much attention from the Lively parties up until this point, is the retaliation. My initial impression, I'm curious what you think. My initial impression of the SH related content in this memo of law so far is that it's not that different from some of the previous filings. I was really hoping for more evidence. I was really hoping for some deets, right? Some receipts, some deets, some evidence. But my impression is that we just don't have as much for the SH. So I'm curious what will happen with the retaliation. And oh my gosh, thank you so much, Jacqueline. Thank you, Jacqueline. Really appreciate you being here and your support on this Friday morning. I know it's still early for folks on the West Coast, but I'm here on the East Coast of the US and got my coffee. So thank you. Thank you, Jacqueline, for your support. It really does mean the world to me. It's like so cool. I don't know. I still get like, oh my God, like people like hanging out and spending time together and looking at the same things. That's pretty awesome. Okay, so we will dive in, and like yesterday, I will mostly just be reading through this live for you and providing, my own commentary as we go. So feel free to drop a comment in the chat if things stick out to you too. So this is page 53 of the PDF. And this is where we start talking about the record. Lively claims easily establishes a prima facie, okay, we're gonna roll with it, case of retaliation. Point 1, the Wayfarer defendants concede that Lively engaged in protected activities. Okay, so from what I understand for the retaliation, that's the first piece, right? She has to have some sort of protected activity. While conceding that Lively has met the protected activity element of her prima facie case, the Wayfarer defendants attempt to undermine the causal link element by pointing to temporal proximity and intervening events that ignores the full scope of Lively's protected conduct, which includes, and of course it's redacted. So just like yesterday, we're probably going to run into so many redactions. And this is disappointing for me in particular, because this seems like such a core, I mean, as a lay person, just peeling back the curtain a little bit, looking at some court documents, I would really like to know, like, what is that protected activity? That seems like such a critical piece of establishing the retaliation. And I did see Little Girl Attorney, I believe, dropped a video earlier this morning. Check out her content. And I also love to follow Not Actually Golden, those two lawyers, for their coverage of this case. Because yes, it seems a little odd. Okay, so there was something in May to June of 2023, something January to June of 2024. So that would have, the May to June would have lined up with, oh, sorry, there was an April there too, but I missed it because, you know, it's redacted. So April and then May to June 2023, that lines up with the actual production of phase 1 of filming. January to June would overlap with phase 2 of filming and the whole editing process. Okay. And then June to August 2024, so that would line up with leading up to the premiere and immediately following the premiere. And then they're also saying that this CRD complaint is protected activity. Okay, and that's December 2024. So really, they're claiming protected activity from April of 2023 all the way through December of 2024. So a year, what is that? About a year and a half, essentially, of protected activity sprinkled in there. The Wayfarer defendants cannot challenge these additional protected activities on reply, but even if they could, each event constitutes legally protected conduct that destroys the causal argument. Number 2, the Wayfarer defendants subjected Lively to a continuous pattern of adverse actions. Okay, so this is the other part, right? Protected activity, adverse employment actions. Courts liberally interpret anti-retaliation provisions to include the entire spectrum of employment actions and consider the totality of the circumstances and an employer's acts collectively, rather than in isolation, because retaliation can manifest in a series of subtle yet damaging injuries. Case law. Okay, here we go. California law, so they're bringing in California law here, defines an adverse action as treatment that is reasonably likely to impair an employee's job performance or prospects for advancement in their career. Title VII is even broader, reaching any action that could well dissuade a reasonable worker from making or supporting a charge of discrimination. And some case law. Such injuries need not directly relate to a plaintiff's employment or workplace, nor affect her compensation or job level. The MSJ does not confront the Wayfarer defendants' continuous pattern of adverse actions, focusing instead on recharacterizing certain publicity efforts as reasonable defensive measures and relying on self-serving and disputed facts to assert that the digital smear campaign never happened. The argument is legally erroneous and ignores contrary evidence, the pending spoliation motion, and expert testimony. Okay, what I find interesting about this, and I think that Little Girl Attorney to, and I'm totally with you, Jacqueline, love them both. Oh, love them both. Not Actually Golden, Little Girl Attorney. I believe, now go watch her video. It's a great video. From what I could gather from that, from the legal perspective around this, is that it seems like they're trying to attack Wayfarer's defense rather than coming in proactively as more a plaintiff would do, right? I'm trying to paraphrase what Little Girl Attorney said. So it's just an odd, what she was saying, I think, is just an odd approach here. Because really the onus is on the plaintiff, the person bringing the claims and the charges, to prove, right? Wayfarer is just there to defend. So that's I think, to me as a lay person, having listened to Little Girl Attorney and now read this, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, like I can connect the dots here. And that's why I think that their content is so helpful with the legal perspective and just spelling it out clearly for folks like us. I mean, I work with astrology, okay? Like, I'm just someone on the internet working with the planets and the stars and trying to make sense of all this too. So I don't get, Kate, all in all, I just don't get from this paragraph, okay, what is that continuous pattern of adverse actions? Are we going to get to that? Maybe we get to that next. Well, let's look. Okay, subpoint. The Wayfarer defendants obstructed Lively's attempts to report and remediate workplace harassment. The Wayfarer defendants impeded Lively's ability to report unlawful conduct and to secure a safe and harassment-free work relationship by dismissing her concerns, attempting to justify their behavior. Interesting use of quotations, becoming huffy or short or withdrawing or making comments that undermine the importance of people feeling safe on set. Where's that coming from? I wonder where those quotes. I'm a little confused by how to make sense of some of the quotes and things included in this response and where those citations are coming from. Maybe I'm missing something, but this seems to be referencing something very specific here. But let's continue. Baldoni and Heath knew that others found their behavior inappropriate, but redacted. They're redacted, the Wayfarer defendant's effort to redacted. So once again, we can't see what is that evidence to support the statement that they obstructed her attempts to report and remediate workplace harassment. Okay, still hidden behind the veil. The Wayfarer defendants impugned Lively's reputation. Courts have long recognized that making disparaging or untrue statements or otherwise, is this supposed to be besmirching? I feel like this is a typo here. Or otherwise bemirching? Besmirching. Help me out. An employee's reputations. Yes. Hello, Sonia. Good to see you. We're currently trying to understand if this word on the screen, is this besmirching? Okay, we'll just keep going. An employee's reputation can constitute adverse treatment, especially, I lost my spot, especially when future employment requires a wholesome reputation. Okay, let's see. Then we have case law, case law, case law. Okay, wholesome reputation. Is there a footnote here? I think not actually Golden brought this up in her video. The wholesome reputation seems like it could be a little bit of a stretch for Blake Lively. What is that wholesome reputation? Based on her prior work? Like, how do you define that? I'm really curious how that applies. Like, what other lines of work would rely on wholesome reputation? Something that relies a lot on image, right? But we'll continue. The Wayfarer defendants redacted, which directly undermined Lively's ability to perform her job, including by jeopardizing her ability to promote the film alongside Hoover. They furthered the pattern of adverse acts against Lively, redacted, despite her well-documented contributions to the film. Defendants redacted. So I agree, Jacqueline, they still have too many redactions. It makes it really hard to see any of the evidence. Like, I'm really curious about this piece around, because I remember earlier in the document, they referenced how, well, this made it hard for, like, one of the adverse impacts of this is it made it hard for Lively to have chemistry with her co-star, but they don't say Baldoni. Like, is it referencing Baldoni? Is it referencing someone else? But that's supposed to be some sort of employment impact. And then here they're bringing in Hoover saying, well, it also undermined Lively's ability to perform her job and promote it alongside Hoover. But how? Why? Like, because from what I understand, from what I recall, she promoted the film with Hoover, right? They did the whole book bonanza thing, among many other events, appearances. Didn't they walk the red carpet together? So to me, I go, what's that? What's that about? They furthered the pattern of adverse acts against Lively redacted, despite her well-documented contributions to the film. I already read that, sorry. Next paragraph. Defendants publicly maligned Lively by planning and implementing a press and social media campaign to bury her. Baldoni departed from the film's agreed-upon marketing plan, despite knowing in real time that it would harm Lively and the other female cast and crew. Redacted. Okay, this sentence makes me pause, because why do they say specifically the female cast and crew? If he were deviating in real time, as they say, from the marketing plan, what specific impact does that have on the female cast and crew versus the male cast and crew? Because there were definitely men involved. So this is like maybe a small example, but to me, it really stands out because I go, this is a very specific use of gendered language, saying female cast and crew, but how? How can you distinguish between that? We'll keep going, I guess, in case it's clarified, but I'm not sure it will be. The defendants simultaneously placed and promoted negative media and social media narratives that falsely blamed Lively for the film's marketing plan and cast aspirations at her character. Cast aspirations at her character. I'm not quite sure what that means, to be honest. Defendants' attempt to cast their campaign as a defensive measure or classic PR ignores the law and the facts, including their prior agreement that negative behavior, including during publicity and promotional work, could be retaliatory. Defendants cite no evidence demonstrating that Lively indisputably started the publicity fight or that she launched an onslaught of vicious negative press against Baldoni. Instead, they rely on disputed events occurring after they set their plan in motion. 2 texts from Reynolds to WME. So Reynolds, to my knowledge, this is the first time Reynolds is being mentioned in this MSJ, if I recall correctly. And they're saying that this is what the Wayfarer parties are bringing forward. The Van Zandt lawsuit and the New York Times reporting on Lively's CRD complaint. None of this can possibly explain the campaign defendants began to hatch and then started executing before the film premiered. What stands out to me here? I think what's hard about this piece for me to wrap my head around is it says the defendant simultaneously placed and promoted negative media and social media narratives. But from what I recall, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've seen anything negative that Baldoni has said about Blake Lively. So are they trying to say that, you know, even though he hasn't said anything negative, it's what was going on behind the scenes? I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around this one. Hey, girly. Hey, girly. Good to see you. Good to see you. We're just making our way through, girly. We're just trying paragraph by paragraph. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee, though. Although I've had too much today, and I will probably make another. It's the time of year, to be honest, where I just give in. I just give in to the caffeine urges. I'm like, whatever. It's dark for so much of the day. I need something to give me a little bit of lightness, a little bit of brightness. And coffee and lattes it is. Okay, we will continue. The evidence that exists demonstrates that defendants have exceeded the bounds of reasonable defensive measures. They did not simply defend Wayfarer by, for example, having Baldoni or Heath give interviews to explain what they experienced on set, or offer witnesses to speak to Baldoni and Heath's character. Instead, they purposely, repeatedly, surreptitiously, and directly, that's a lot of adverbs there, attacked Lively's character and reputation, including in ways that directly contradicted their own perception of Lively's. So they say they directly attacked Lively's character and reputation, but what directly attacked her character and reputation? I'd love to see an example of that, just for clarity, right? And we've got a comment, Florgon? Am I saying that right? I hope I'm saying that right. It makes sense you'd struggle to understand because it's not based in reality. To my memory, Justin has never said a bad word about her. Quite the contrary. He's too nice. Yeah, I've seen a lot of discussion online about that, right? Like, is he too nice? And I don't know. That's a hard one to say because at the end of the day, Justin's got to decide for himself, just like all of us. How are we going to show up? What words are we going to use? How are we going to behave? And my impression is that he really does hold his values seriously. And so it seems like he's a person who's trying to make sure that the way he shows up lines up with that. But I also agree. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And you're saying too nice for Hollywood, I guess I should say, because I completely agree with you, Florgon. I'm sorry if I'm totally butchering that. It's really interesting name. I wonder, where is that from? Flor. Is Flor flower? Does that mean flower? Sorry, I'm getting distracted. I was going to say, I'm really I agree with you that, because something I've said multiple times in live streams is I think that this was a huge culture clash. It was a huge values clash and culture clash initially, right? I think it morphed into something just even more convoluted. But I can appreciate the desire to be nice. I can appreciate the desire to be kind. Like, I've spent a lot of time in more of those spiritual woo-woo spaces too. And those spaces which are very focused on being heart-centered and sorry, I've got like hair in my eye. Being heart-centered and wanting to show up in a certain way and being kind to people. And fundamentally, because I also have the experience in corporate America, very suit and tie, buttoned up, cold, hard, competitive, that those things are like oil and water so often. So it doesn't surprise me that there's that clash, right? I'm a little bit on a tangent, but I appreciate you bringing that up because yeah, I agree. I at least have never come across him saying anything negative. It sounds like he was being very intentional throughout this whole process to not do that. And we're not seeing any evidence to the contrary raised here. So we will continue. Where did we leave off? Okay. An employer's right to defend itself does not authorize threats, intimidation, or efforts to publicly discredit employees who have raised harassment complaints. Okay, but how, again, what are they saying? What are the evidence that Wayfarer threatened her, intimidated her, or tried to publicly discredit her? Because again, if there's evidence, if there's facts, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. I want all that to come to the surface. The Wayfarer defendant's employer coordinated and funded smear campaign directed by the same executives Lively accused of harassment constitutes quintessential adverse conduct and DARVO. So they're dropping the DARVO again. The Wayfarer defendant's employer coordinated and funded smear campaign. So what's the evidence of the smear campaign? That's the question I continue to have. Next section, defendants filed a baseless and retaliatory lawsuit. So they're saying the lawsuit itself is part of the retaliation. Defendants' frivolous and dismissed $400 million lawsuit launched with the purpose of suing Lively, her family, and anyone on her side into oblivion constitutes adverse action. And then there's case law. Okay, so that's a statement. Number 3, a causal link connects Lively's protected acts to defendants' adverse conduct. Okay, so this is where they're trying to, so is all they're saying there just that the lawsuit itself was retaliation? It says suits that are designed to deter employees from seeking legal redress may constitute adverse actions when filed with a retaliatory motive and without a reasonable basis in fact or law. So I think what they're trying to say, if I'm understanding this correctly, is that because it was dismissed, that shows that it was like it didn't have a reasonable basis in fact or law. And they're arguing that the lawsuit itself was retaliatory in nature. Okay, I mean, I can follow the logic. I just don't know if I agree with that, because I feel like that would just handcuff a lot of people to not have that as a way, like to not have the ability to bring a lawsuit if they need to, my opinion. But we'll keep going. A causal link connects Lively's protected acts to defendant's adverse. Let's see. Girly says everything Justin does to defend himself is Darvo for her. Yeah. I need to do some research and reading about this Darvo concept because I'm not as familiar with it. Sounds like they got Jennifer Freed, whoever coined the term, to come in as an expert witness for Blake Lively. They mentioned that earlier in the MSJ. My understanding is that it's used to describe pretty severe retaliatory behavior and beyond retaliation, very manipulative. And isn't it more of a psychological concept, not a legal concept? I could be making that up. I'm outing my ignorance there. I should do some more research on that. So, okay, we'll keep going though. Defendants have failed to undermine the causal link connecting Lively's repeated protected acts so here's that timeline, between April 2023 and December 2024 to their pattern of adverse treatment. Defendant's sole challenge to causation is purported lack of temporal proximity, but temporal proximity is not the only way to infer retaliatory animus. So they're saying it doesn't have to be close to it. There are other ways to connect the protected activity and the retaliation itself besides just time alone. Temporal proximity is unnecessary here because the record shows that Lively's protected acts are precisely what caused defendants to retaliate. Defendant's argument separately fails because it assumes that nothing happened after January 4th, 2024, which ignores Lively's intervening protected acts and their ongoing pattern of public and private antagonism against her. Lively faced no real consequences for at least 8 months after negotiating the protections rider. Okay, so that's what Wayfarer is saying. I mean, honestly, I feel like I would need a lawyer to weigh in here around that temporal, and maybe Little Girl Attorney talked about this, if I remember correctly. I think she did say something, was skeptical of this temporal proximity argument, that they're saying it's not necessary here. So lawyers, help with interpretation. Okay, we're going to move on. Defendants failed to produce admissible evidence of legitimate non-retaliatory reasons for their sustained course of retaliatory actions. That's a mouthful. Because Lively has shown a prima facie case, defendants must but cannot point to admissible evidence to support a legitimate reason for their sustained adverse treatment of Lively. Defendants' argument that they would have reacted to Lively's onslaught of negative press against them, even if no concerns about their onset behavior had ever been raised, fails on multiple levels. The argument relies on Heath's disputed, foundationless, and self-serving testimony, which is contradicted by admissible evidence that, guys, we got to evidence, and it's redacted. Okay. So once again, this, without being able to see anything behind the redaction, I sort of go, well, isn't by nature a testimony supposed to be a little self-serving? I don't know. And Joe, welcome, Joe. Have you joined before, Joe? I don't know if I recognize your name. Feels more and more like the takeover plan of the movie started way before the filming started. Yeah, that's a hard one to know. Like, wouldn't we all just be so curious to know what was going on in Lively's mind and Reynolds' mind at the very beginning of this? That's a mystery to me. How were they, like, what were they thinking? What were their conversations like? Also, I see Joe and Girly chatting in the chat. What language is that? I'm curious. What language? I do not recognize. But welcome, Joe. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this. At least here in Boston, it is incredibly cold. It's like 10 degrees outside Fahrenheit. But it's a beautiful sunny day, which I'm pretty happy about. Have a little sunshine. Okay. The defendant's insistence that they needed to defend themselves against Lively's concerns overlooks that she made no public accusations until she filed the CRD complaint. This argument also fails by focusing on the publicity-related aspects of the retaliation campaign while ignoring the other adverse actions against Lively. Finally, the Wayfarer defendants claim that they had legitimate reasons to act as they did ignores the volume and severity of conduct and the fact that such conduct far exceeds any reasonable defense and was and is an unleashed fury of offense. I think that's just a fancy way where they're saying that this wasn't defensive, right? That's the argument. What they were doing was not defensive. It was offensive against Lively. People from the Philippines. Welcome then. Oh, you've been around. Well, welcome to the visible public chat. Appreciate. I also hang around and not always comment on things. So you are welcome here. I talk about this a lot. Like I hang out on Reddit a lot. I read a lot of the Reddit threads, but I just do not post. So welcome to the public chat, Joe. And is it Tagalog? Is that the language in the Philippines? Is that an ignorant question? I'm sorry if it is. Let's see what else. And then we've got Tiffany. Welcome, Tiffany. Also, Tiffany is a member. Shout out to Tiffany. And Tiffany, because you are a level 2 star member, I'll take this opportunity for a little announcement. I am currently uploading. It is struggling to upload on my YouTube. So it's not quite there yet, but the hour-long members-only video, first members-only video is coming out today, as long as it uploads. And it is a detailed review of Mercury retrograde for Blake Lively from December 2022 up to this year. So I've got lots of slides in there for you, Tiffany, and anyone else on the level 2 membership. So that's exciting. Coming your way soon. Okay. And you say, I agree. The IP had far less value when Baldoni purchased it. Then the book blew up on TikTok and Lively was added to the project. So everyone realized this could be and so began the attempt. Interesting. Oh, so you're saying, Tiffany, that the book blew up. When did the book blow up? I'm not familiar with that backstory. That's really interesting. Then the book blew up on TikTok after he purchased it. Oh, interesting. I know I have some earlier videos around the early correspondence going back to 2019 between Hoover and Baldoni. I'm pretty sure I have a whole video on that very early on in my coverage of the case, looking at their correspondence and the astrology of it. So that's interesting. Yeah, whoop, whoop. Successful upload. It should be. We'll see what happens. You never know with technology. I did decide to launch this during Mercury retrograde. So also, there's been something weird going on, side tangent, related to the memberships that I just launched on my channel.
I set the prices at a certain point, and then someone told me that when they look at my membership, the prices are higher than the price level that I set for it. So I've put in an inquiry to YouTube support to be like, yo, what's up? That's kind of important to make sure that the prices are what I wanted to set things at, and that you're not like bumping them up. So anyway, I'm trying to figure out what's going on there. But when that happened, I had that moment where I was like, Janessa, you kind of brought this on yourself by launching the memberships during Mercury retrograde. So whatever. And Joe says, yes, Tagalog is one of the languages in the Philippines. Not a lot of people have heard of that. You're very well. Oh, well, I'm glad it wasn't like a super ignorant question. I had a friend in college who's Filipina, and she, I just remember like when she would talk to her mom over the phone, like they would speak in Tagalog. So that was the association I had. I was like, oh, that kind of looks like it could be Tagalog, sorry. So yeah. Oh, and you guys found each other through this community? Oh my God, that just warms my heart. Okay, sorry guys, I'm getting distracted. Okay, we'll get back to the document, or else we will never finish this document, and I am determined. Okay. So this is where, if we can come back to the document, defendants wanted to bury Lively for speaking out against them. So they're really hitting hard on this bury verb. Even if defendants have met their second stage burden, the record contains evidence that defendants' articulated business reason to defend themselves was false, pretextual, or motivated, at least in part, by the plaintiff's protected activity. I don't know. I need a lawyer to weigh in on this. Like, how strong of an argument is this on either side? How strong is the Wayfarer's argument? And how strong is this argument? That's way above my understanding and education and training, but we'll keep going. The failure to prevent count must proceed to trial. The Wayfarer defendants had an affirmative and mandatory duty to prevent harassment and retaliation and to take all reasonable steps necessary to do so, including a prompt, thorough, and impartial investigation, but failed to do so. Wayfarer and It Ends With Us movie failed to redacted. So whatever they failed to do, whatever the evidence is that it was insufficient, we don't know because it's behind a redaction. I do think the more we read through this, though, this MSJ, it does seem like there were gaps on the Wayfarer side. I mean, to be fair, right? I lean in the direction of believing Baldoni and Heath and their take on things. And I can also appreciate nuance and complexity in that it is very possible that things maybe weren't set up in the way they needed to be to ensure that they could at minimum protect themselves, right, from potential HR issues if a dispute came up. And also to ensure that if a true valid dispute comes up, that people could bring that to more of a unbiased third party. In my opinion, that's critical, right? Like I think about all the weird situations I encountered through my professional career in consulting and even in academia, and going to college and going to grad school, and just how those power dynamics are tricky. And if you don't have an independent third party to bring things to, that's hard. So that's one piece of it. And then the other piece of it too is the investigation. I do remember, tell me if I'm wrong, I do remember that there is may still be ongoing, an investigation that they launched, but that was after the fact. So those do seem like, to be fair, those do seem like misses in the process. But is that enough of a weakness for the Lively parties to argue their case in this part of the retaliation piece? I don't know. I'd have to ask a lawyer about that. And then Tiffany's clarifying, Baldoni purchased IP in 2019 and It Ends With Us. Oh, it became popular in 2021. It is alleged Reynolds tried to buy out Baldoni, but he refused. I also saw something around that, like the at minimum, it was like gossip, right? Like some sort of thing going around where Reynolds tried to buy that from him. That makes it even more interesting, Tiffany, that little nugget of detail. So thank you for sharing the fact that he purchased it before it really took off. It makes me wonder why. I mean, I remember reading the emails between him. This is all from the timeline of relevant events. And he did include those emails between him and Colleen Hoover. And he gave some very specific reasons why, mostly for the social message around DV and just trying to address that issue in this way through some sort of production. I don't know. I wonder what else he saw in it, like what gave him that intuitive hit. And then Flurgon is, I think Colleen, she feels like since this whole movie blew up, she missed out on a bigger payday. She's British, sold as Justin, relatively inexpensively. Do we know how much it cost? I always get really curious when I'm like, what's the dollar amount there? It's the business part of me that I'm like, what was that investment? Right? Like, what was the upfront investment financially? And then, it sounds like, based on industry talk, that it was pretty successful financially, right? So that investment paid off in that sense for Wayfarer. And yeah, you bring up an interesting point around how much did Colleen let that go for? I don't know. Didn't she also start her own production company? I thought I saw something online. I don't know if that's just like the Reddit stuff or if that's based on other things. My brain is such a mush with details from this case. It's like these random threads right here and there. Okay, back to the document. Where were we? Nor can they claim futility because an investigation, we were talking about the investigation, could have substantiated Lively's allegations, resulted in remedial actions, including discipline for Baldoni and Heath, or prevented defendants from launching their subsequent retaliation campaign. So they're harping on the there wasn't an investigation, which I can appreciate, right? Like, I wonder how different it would have been if there were some sort of investigation. I don't know. I don't know employment law. But they're saying that based on these failures, summary judgment is inappropriate. Okay. And then Julia, welcome Julia. Julia says Wayfarer did have a real HR complaint related to ageism and they fully investigated it. So they did have the ability to handle HR complaints. They hired third-party HR for the film as well. Oh, I'm curious where you saw that, Julia. I'd love to take a look at. Was that something disclosed through court documents, like unsealed things along the way? Yeah, I'd be very curious because when we think astrology, this all relates to the Pluto transit that we've been talking about through Justin Baldoni's 6th house of work and workplace relationships. And Tiffany says, don't quote me, but I think I heard it was purchased for like a couple $100,000. And when Reynolds offered to buy it from Baldoni, he offered millions. And yes, Hoover is trying to become a filmmaker now. Okay. Interesting. We'll see where that goes for her, that endeavor. Julia says it was somewhere in the court documents a while ago. Okay. So maybe that's the counter argument, right? If there's receipts there to show that there was some sort of HR process. And then Flurgon is saying, you remember hearing Ryan offered him millions too. Okay. So curious. Always follow the money. Lively was an employee, to continue, under Title VII in California law. Okay, so this is the argument. She was not an independent contractor. Defendants wrongly argue that Lively was an independent contractor rather than an employee for the purposes of counts 1, 2, and 5. Whether an individual is an employee entitled to Title VII's protections depends on a fact-specific analysis of 13 factors known as the Reed factors. Control is the most important factor and is alone reason to deny summary judgment. Lively's offer letter and the ALA, actor loan out agreement, I think that's what that stands for, are replete with terms that show defendants' right to control the manner and means of Lively's performance, requiring Lively to redact it. I feel like it's such a miss every time there's an opportunity to drop a receipt and it's just redacted. Isn't the actor loan out agreement, hasn't that been unsealed? Am I misunderstanding that? Because one question I have about all these redactions is, are they all coming from sealed materials? Because if it's been unsealed before, why would it be redacted here? But I look at this and I'm going, I thought the actor loan out agreement was unsealed. Maybe not. And foregone saying, but was she an employee? She never signed the contract. Yeah, this always comes back to, did she sign it? Did she not sign it? What are the implications of that? And that's where I would need to ask, not actually Golden. The ALA gave, it ends with this movie redaction. Defendants complain that Lively's A-list status precludes a finding of control, but being a star does make Lively something less of an employee. Defendants' argument that they had no control because of Lively's various contributions to the film also fails because It Ends With Us movie had ultimate say. Defendants' failure to meet the control test is dispositive, as failure to establish even one factor renders the exception inapplicable. Defendants concede California's employee presumption, but claim that Lively is an independent contractor under the narrow business-to-business exception. That exception applies only if the Wayfarer defendants meet all 12 statutory criteria, which they do not cite, let alone discuss. To avoid a finding of employment status, defendants thus must meet California's more stringent ABC test, which requires establishing that Lively A was free from their control. So there's that control word again. B, performs work outside their usual business. And C, is customarily engaged in an independently established occupation or business. Defendants cannot meet their burden because they fail even to mention this test, but even if they had, they can meet it because Lively is an employee for the above reasons. So these are all the reasons why they say she's an employee. She's not an independent contractor. And so much of it, from my impression, comes down to that C word, control, which also relates to Pluto. One of the significations of Pluto is not only power, but also the power between the relationship between power and control. Yeah, interesting. And this makes me think of what little girl attorney was saying today, because it's very clear on this paragraph that they are criticizing Wayfarer's argument. But I go, okay, and the onus is still on Lively to prove. So I don't know. I'd have to defer to the legal experts on this one. I really don't know what to make sense of this. And that's what makes me think that, I know a lot of people are hopeful that all the claims will be thrown out. My sense is that they won't all be thrown out, right? Like something's going to survive this. The MJOP and the MSJ, there will be something, I think, that survives this process. And I know there's been a lot of talk on the interwebs about settlement. Is settlement, are discussions ongoing? I wouldn't be surprised if everybody's just waiting to see what survives this stage before really starting to hash out whether or not to agree to anything. Because they want to see, right? Both sides, I would imagine, would want to see what actually survives this. And I don't know the timeline of the court process enough in this moment. When will we know the outcome of MSJ and JOP? Will that not be till January? Because that would line up with the astrology timeline. So, yeah. But moving on. Okay, Lively's contract claims must proceed to trial. The ALA and CRA are valid enforceable agreements. The ALA is a binding enforceable agreement. So this is the one that wasn't signed, but they're saying it's binding. The court should reject the Wayfarer defendant's argument that the ALA was never validly formed and is unenforceable because defendants previously sought to enforce the ALA against Lively in their now dismissed lawsuit, which asserted a claim for breach of the covenant of good faith and fair dealing predicted on the ALA. Let's see. Contending ALA was an enforceable contract notwithstanding simultaneous allegation that Lively never even signed her employment agreement. Alleging Lively and the Wayfarer parties entered into a contract by which Lively agreed to perform as an actor in the film. It ends with us. Defendants relied expressly on the ALA, quoting verbatim from its terms, to oppose Lively's motion to dismiss to the First Amendment complaint. It is elementary that a party cannot sue on a contract and at the same time repudiate its obligations under it. Defendants' prior insistence that the ALA was a binding agreement stops them. Is that a what does that word mean? From argument otherwise now, and is a judicially noticeable admission that warrants granting Lively summary judgment on the ALA's enforceability. I think this whole paragraph is, to be honest, a little hard for me to understand. But I think what it's trying to say is that because the Wayfarer parties use the actor loan out agreement in previous arguments, that they can't backtrack from Lively's perspective on that now, that it should be seen as enforceable. So, yeah. What do you think about that one? The Wayfarer defendants also cannot maintain their argument that execution was a condition precedent because under California law, a party to an agreement waives a condition precedent by expressing a desire and intent to go forward with a contract notwithstanding the failure of the condition precedent. This is legalese above my pay grade, guys, but we'll keep reading. Setting aside the provisions they later breached, Wayfarer, and it ends with us movie, performed the material terms of the ALA, including by paying the contingent compensation that it contemplated, rather than the amount specified in the offer letter. Okay, so they're saying what they actually paid her aligns with the ALA, not the offer letter. So that should be seen as more legitimate or enforceable. Had the Wayfarer defendants believed a condition precedent was unmet, they could have, but chose not to, withhold payment. They did not do that. And in fact, on May 3rd, 2024, redacted. Plus, the plain language of the CRA, which the CRA, Tiffany, I saw you had a comment here. She didn't sign it, meaning the actor loan agreement said we ended up with the 17-point or whatever. Yeah, the 17-point or whatever document. That's the CRA, right? I'm pretty sure the 17 points is supposed to be the CRA, the writer, if I'm remembering that correctly. Let's see. I totally lost my slide, which Heath and Lively executed. So they're saying Heath and Lively executed the CRA and it contemplated something, but we don't know what that is. Whereas here, a party's conduct is so inconsistent with the intent to enforce a legal right, the intention to give up that right will be presumed, notwithstanding evidence that the party did not subjectively intend to relinquish it. That's legalese. I'm going to move on from that. Defendants claim there was no meeting of the minds on the ALA based on the conclusory assertion that no final agreement was ever reached because there remained material terms that the parties were discussing in July 2024. Only 4 terms remained subject to discussion at that time. This is so frustrating. And that's redacted. Those terms were immaterial in practice because both parties performed the remainder of the ALA's terms even while continuing to discuss those terms. I think what this paragraph is saying is that the defendants say we didn't fully agree on this because there were still some terms that we were discussing. And the lively argument is, well, there were only 4. There were only 4 that we were still discussing. And that's immaterial because we fulfilled everything else in the ALA. What a lawyer would say to that, I don't know. And Zane, we have a new person entering the chat. Zane, welcome to our Friday live stream. Zane is saying this is a big deal. The way actors contract themselves out will be impacted by this case one way or another. Yeah. Yeah, it seems like such an interesting, I mean, I can't speak to the entertainment industry, but what I know from my business background is that the reason why so many people create LLCs, I mean, it's in the acronym, right? Limited liability company. It's an LLC. The whole point is to create separation, so to manage liability concerns. And it sounds like that. I mean, if we assume that this is standard in this industry, which I'm not an entertainment industry expert, but under that assumption, if this is how actors really contract themselves out, it does raise some interesting questions, right? Are you truly an employee or are you an independent contractor? That has so many implications, tax implications, liability implications. So that's an interesting point, which I'd assume the industry as a whole is not pleased with this and blowing the lid off how they do PR. Yeah, to connect it to the PR, I think that's one of the biggest impacts of this case. I would agree, in peeling back the curtain, piercing the veil of that illusion of PR, which if we connect it to the astrology, this plays into the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Neptune being illusion and fantasy, and Saturn being reality. And for those who are not familiar with the astrology, Saturn and Neptune have been on this journey to eventually come together and conjoin on February 20th, 2026. And this is why I started following this case. One of the reasons why I saw that was happening very close to Blake Lively's North Node in Aries. And Aries is ruled by Mars. And one of the core essences of Mars is piercing, separating, cutting. So when we combine all of that energetic context and language, I think it's fascinating that we're seeing the illusion of PR in Hollywood, right? The illusion of celebrity culture bumping up against the reality of what actually happens behind the scenes. And we're piercing through, like all of this is cutting through in this very aggressive lawsuit. And all of this is happening, will happen. It's playing out and it's building up to February 2026 and even into March for Blake Lively specifically in her 9th house of legal matters. So I know I talk about that a lot, but I know some people are not, maybe are joining the chat for the first time or not as familiar with the astrology. So I try to mention that often because that is why I'm still covering this. Well, and the personal impact because of the subpoenas, but I'm just really fascinated to see how this plays out. And then let's see. Saint says, Not Actually Golden laid out the precedent. This was set really nicely yesterday. Yes, shout out to Not Actually Golden. Go watch her videos. And it sounds like, Zane, you're saying she did a video specifically on the potential impact for the contracts and how that's done in the industry. Really interesting. Okay. So they're saying the CRA is a binding enforceable agreement. Defendants' argument that the CRA is unenforceable because its validity dependent on the ALA fails because the ALA is an enforceable agreement. Separately, the CRA was an independent, fully executed agreement and nothing on its face conditions its validity on the execution of the ALA, including the reference to additional terms that would be incorporated into the ALA. Defendants cannot explain why, if the CRA's enforceability depended on the execution of the ALA, it was necessary to execute the CRA at all, much less in January 2024. The CRA, by its own terms, refers to an independent exchange of consideration, and Lively's suggestion to refer to the ALA was not a unilateral statement Oh my God, guys. But a change that Wayfarer accepted, which demonstrates a contemporary mutual understanding that the ALA was in effect and had been amended. Okay, my layperson interpretation of this is that the Wayfarer parties are arguing, well, if the ALA is not enforceable, then that means that the CRA, which was a follow-up to the ARA, is also not enforceable. And the Lively side is arguing against that is not a dependency. So that's a legal thing that I would need to defer to a lawyer to understand. While defendants contend that the ARA lacked consideration, either California or New York law would require new consideration since it modified an existing agreement. Regardless, there was consideration for the letter because a written instrument is presumptive evidence of valid consideration, which defendants do not rebut. The rule defendants cite that a promise to perform an existing legal duty cannot constitute consideration only applies where the duty is neither doubtful nor the subject of honest dispute. Lively's duty to continue was at least doubtful because she possessed a right under the ALA in a provision never subject to dispute to terminate the agreement in the event that SH took place. Further, it is disputed that Lively executed the protection rider as an alternative to pursuing a more formal HR process and forbearance to assert a claim as valid consideration. This is a lot of legalese, but I think it's just a continuation of, right, it's all, this is the point they're trying to communicate here, that the CRA is binding. That 17-point list, which was signed, from what I understand, they're saying it's binding. And Zane says, I'm fascinated by the astrology. I'm not very knowledgeable, but I've been intrigued by the age of Aquarius since 2020 and the impact it would have on celebrity astrologers. Said would happen, and it is. Yeah, it's the coming down. And I think we're seeing that in so many other areas of society. This what is fantasy or illusion or narrative or story versus the reality. And it's playing out well beyond this lawsuit in some kind of horrific ways right now. But I think that's a necessary part of the disillusion. We have to face what's real. And that's going to be hard for a lot of people. Let's see. Okay. Let's get back to the document. Where are we at? 67. Okay, we are getting close. We're getting close. We're almost there. I have to say, I'm disappointed though. Unless this is happening in the last 4 or 5 pages of this thing, I was really hoping that in this MSJ, we would get more of the evidence and the receipts around the mechanisms of the alleged smear campaign. How was that done? Instead, I feel like we just keep hearing there was an untraceable smear campaign. And I'm like, okay, but like how? How does one actually, like what do they think Jed Wallace and others did? What are the specifics of that? Maybe they address that in the rest, but I don't know. Well, let's see. Defendants' other arguments as to the breach of contract claims fail. Defendants wrongly claim they are entitled to summary judgment on Lively's breach of contract claims because she purportedly did not comply with the notice and cure provision. They cured any such breach, and Lively's not entitled to the damages she seeks. Defendants have waived the right to claim Lively's non-compliance because they failed to assert it as an affirmative defense, which must be pleaded and proved by the party in breach on pain of waiver. Even without waiver, Lively satisfied the notice and cure provision because the Wayfarer defendants had written notice of their breach by December 31st, 2025, and Lively filed the first and second amended complaints outside the cure period, mooting the issue. As to the claim that defendants cured any breach after November 2023, they do not, because they cannot contend that they ever cured the breach of the anti-retaliation provision, much less before Lively's amendments were filed. Finally, defendants contend that Lively's contract damages are duplicative and exceed the ALA's limitation on consequential and special damages. But the same wrongful act may constitute both a breach of contract and an invasion of an interest protected by the law of torts. And Lively is entitled to seek damages on alternative and independent theories. For similar reasons, Lively's claimed damages for the breach of the CRA's anti-retaliation provision constitute general damages, not special damages. This is a lot of legal argument that I do not understand, to be honest. But it's all, I mean, it seems like it's all around whether or not she breached her contract. Lawyers, help. Welcome. Kialo, am I saying that right? Has entered the chat. Welcome. And Zane says, all the lawyers said this was weak and sounded like a defense brief. Yeah, I heard that from little girl attorney too. MC is in the house. MC is in the house. Woo, woo. I see you on Reddit, MC. I always love reading your comments on Reddit. As I'm lurking over there, I'm like, MC with the receipts. Here we go. Okay. So welcome. This is where it gets tricky because there were provisions in the contract where she had to give them a chance to rectify issues, and she did not. Zane, it sounds like you understand this more than I do. This breach of contract piece. And this is why I think I don't know. My hunch, as I said, is that there's going to be something that survives this. I would be shocked. I really would if Judge Lyman just got rid of everything. I would be. I think there's going to be something survive it. The question is what specific claims survive it? I think I would. I don't know. Would I be as Would I be as shocked if all of it survives? Like, what would be more shocking to you? If everything was thrown out at this stage with MSJ and MJOP, or everything survives and nothing is taken out? What would be more shocking to you? I might have to think about that one. I think I would be more shocked if everything were thrown out. I think I would be maybe disappointed if nothing were pared down at this stage, but I don't know if I'd be shocked. Let me know in the chat. What do you think? And Kialo says, I was hoping I would have more insight on what Justa did. Yeah, I was thinking there'd be a lot more information about that. So I agree. Let's see. Blake's replies were so chaotic. Lol. Thanks. You're welcome, MC. I get very verbose on Reddit, so I'm glad you go there. Yeah, I've been mentioning in these live streams the last couple of days, MC, that I, because some people are like showing up in the chat, and I'm like, oh, welcome. Have you been around? And they're like, no, just been lurking. And I'm like, I totally get it. That's what I do on Reddit. I lurk. I try to stay up to date. It's probably not healthy. Full confession. It is probably not healthy, but I am most likely to be scrolling on Reddit when I'm laying in bed at the end of the day. And it's probably not a good thing to do right before I try to fall asleep. But it's like the one time I can kind of get caught up on the chitter chatter over there. And it's just a pattern. And like Sadie's curled up next to me, and I'm like, girl, we gotta see what are the updates, what people saying. And if you say my name, it is K Aloha Lee. Am I? I'm sorry, I'm still struggling. Kaloha Lee. K Aloha Lee. K Aloha Lee. Am I getting that? K Aloha Lee. If I'm saying that correctly, I will continue saying it. But if not, I will just call you Mia. Kelohali. Kelohali. That's so pretty. It just, yeah, I love the sound of that. Zane says, I work in state healthcare policy consulting and do a lot of contract. Oh, another consultant. I did business strategy consulting. So my exposure to contracts, yours is probably a lot more complex if you're doing healthcare policy consulting. That's so funny. You're in healthcare. I was in healthcare, except I was doing business strategy consulting. So not policy related. It was all like my clients were health insurance companies and hospital systems, and I worked in digital product strategy. So think about like insurance companies or hospital systems wanting to roll out a new mobile app, or they want to improve like their web experience for patients and members. And so I would help clients roll out these new digital products and services. And so my exposure to contracting was all just our contracts with our clients, which I always had to review as a manager on the project. And, because I would staff our teams and, make sure that our scope of work in the contract, that was going to be achievable for the team that I was actually bringing on to do the work. Because a lot of times managing directors would just, they want to sell, right? They want the money, they want to sell. So it's pie in the sky, like, oh yeah, we can do X, Y, Z. And I would go review the contract before legal would sign off on it and be like, can we like rein in the scope a little bit? I'm not sure that's actually feasible in 8 weeks. Okay. So sounds like you had a lot of exposure to policy contracting or contracting in healthcare policy. Yeah, that's probably a little more complicated than what I was doing. So interesting. And MC says, I would be far more shocked by everything surviving. Interesting. I don't even think she made a decent case for having grounds to sue. She made almost no argument for why she was an employee. Yeah, so you'd be shocked by everything surviving. I think for me, there's a part of me, I don't know if I fully believe this. Okay, this is just something that I've been playing with, trying on for size, is the idea that Lyman, it seems, has been very, very broad in his allowance of a lot of things to go through with discovery because of the possibility of appeal from Lively, not from Wayfarer. I'm talking from Lively. That's the only thing that I can think of is, well, maybe he would just let it all go through. But he also seems like, again, layperson, not an expert, my 2 cents, not worth anything. It also seems like he's a stickler for process, for timeline, for efficiency. That's my impression. So actually, I go back on what I just said. And I think, well, I would be surprised if he would let anything through if he thought that it was just going to cause a lot of inefficiency. I don't know. Those are my current thoughts. And Zane says, agreed. My gut says some will survive, some won't. Yeah. Kealohali. Kealohali. I think I got it. And MC says the allegations of him getting angry and yelling are appearing for the first time, and she changed her allegations against him. Now he ogled her naked. Oh, are you referring to the allegations that Justin Baldoni got angry and yelled? Yeah, that wasn't in prior filings. That is interesting to me because I don't believe that Baldoni and Heath are perfect people. Is it very possible that, for whatever reason, Justin maybe did get angry, get impatient, raise his voice? Very possible. Very possible. But Does that rise to the level of SH? Does that matter in relationship to Blake Lively's SH claims? Because that was, from what I understand, something that Alex Sachs was raising. But Alex Sachs isn't a plaintiff. And I'm not saying her experience doesn't matter. Experience matters. And the question is, though, does it rise to the level of, or is it relevant to determine if Blake Lively's claims rise to the level of needing to go to trial and to a jury? I don't know. Those are legal questions I have. Let's see. It means my lovely. Aw, that's so sweet. It means that I love my lovely. Aw. Thank you for clarifying that and sharing that. Mostly state healthcare and Medicaid, so big managed care contracts, and I work on the oversight and accountability pieces mostly. Boo! That's a doozy, Zane. That's a doozy. I know like just enough about that world to know that is, that's complicated stuff. And Kayla Hali says, all I see is, she's talking about other people's experience and how they should feel about it. Yeah, are you referring to the Alex Sachs stuff? Because I agree. Zane says, I'd be pleasantly surprised if it's all thrown out as a taxpayer. I think that's appropriate, and this isn't a good use of. Yeah, I agree. It's a huge use of. It's one thing for centimillionaires and billionaires to spend a lot of money on stuff like this. Okay, right? But it's another thing when it starts to impact the use of the courts, and it's already doing that, right? As far as the time, but especially if it goes to trial. Y'all are having such good points. I know I need to get back to the PDF, but I want to get through these. MC says he let a lot in during discovery, but not we've seen what Blake has and substantiate. Yeah, I agree. I was very underwhelmed by what's in this MSJ. I haven't looked at the MJOP, but my understanding is that the MJOP is on legal basis alone, that this MSJ that we've been reviewing is what is supposed to have the evidence. The evidence from discovery, right? Like all the discovery they've been doing for the last few months. And I'm very underwhelmed, unless it's all hidden behind redactions. But then I go, why? Why is so much hidden behind redactions? Yeah. So let's get back to the PDF. But I appreciate everyone dropping their impressions in the chat. We are so close. We're so close. Okay. MC, this makes me respect you that much more because I know you said you go through all the documents, and I'm just like, props to you. Granted, it's a little different to like read it on your own, like when I read it on my own versus do it live with you guys, because we're like chit-chatting throughout the whole thing and I get distracted and talk about things that just take us off track a little bit. But yeah, this is a lot. The false light claim survives because California law applies. So this really hinges on whether or not California law applies to this case. Defendant's contention that New York law applies to Lively's false light claim ignores that the ALA contains a choice of law provision that mandates application of California law to that claim. Even if it did not, California law would apply to the false light claim, okay, because it turns on defendant's conduct in California, including but not limited to the execution of a communication strategy from California that included blaming Lively for marketing for which Sony and Wayfarer, not Lively, was responsible, and distributing the dance scene footage to friendly outlets. Okay, so now they're saying, so how does this bump up against what's like the theory or the idea that it was Maximum Effort who had a big influence on the marketing? Because they're saying, Lively's camp is saying, the marketing campaign was from Sony and Wayfarer. Defendants claim that Lively lacks standing to bring a false light claim because she is not a California resident, but the authorities on which defendants rely are unpersuasive because they cannot be reconciled with Article 1, Section 1 of the California Constitution, which by its terms applies to all people. In any event, false light claims do not depend on the California Constitution because it is a common law tort, which makes cases limiting the reach of California's Constitution to residents inapplicable. And even where constitutional privacy claims are squarely at issue, other cases have rejected the argument that such claims are unavailable to non-residents, instead applying ordinary choice of law analyses. This is where, again, I need a lawyer to weigh in on this whole, because I've heard different things, to what extent the California law should apply. I don't know. And MC saying, Lively simply lying. Sony literally contracted maximum effort. Ryan even starred in a promo skit that Blake directed that Wayfarer didn't authorize. Yeah. So this seems to very much not line up with that. Okay. And I remember seeing snippets of that too, the Reynolds, because is that where Reynolds did the whole skit thing with Brandon Sklenar? That was weird. The defamation claim must proceed to trial. The MSJ recycles a number of the arguments advanced in the MJP, including that the defamatory statements are opinions and privileged. Those arguments fail for the reasons discussed in the MJP opposition. Defendants in the MSJ argue that the defamatory statements are true because the Wayfarer defendants do not harass or retaliate against Lively. It is detailed above that argument depends entirely on factual disputes, precluding summary judgment. So too with their argument as to actual malice. This court must determine whether the evidence presented is such that a reasonable jury might find that actual malice had been shown with convincing clarity. Here, a reasonable jury, I don't know why I keep wanting to say jury could find that the defendants caused their agent Friedman to publish the defamatory statements with subjective disregard for truth. They really, really want to nail Friedman on this, don't they? As explained in detail above, Baldoni, Heath, and Sarowitz knew specific types of conduct that amounted to SH based on Wayfarer's own policy, knew that Lively complained about such conduct long before the film was edited or marketed, and admitted not just that many of the incidents occurred as Lively had described them, but that Lively genuinely believes her claims. Thus, there is ample evidence from which a reasonable jury could find that defendants knew Lively did not fabricate her claims of SH. This is even more true as to the claim that Lively fabricated her claims in order to gain control of the film's marketing, which defendants knew was untrue at all times, given their acknowledgement that Sony had been responsible for the film's marketing plan. As to the assertion that Tag, Abel, and Street did nothing proactive, but only responded to inbound media inquiries, thereby proving Lively's retaliation claims to be fabricated, a reasonable jury would likely find that defendants were knowingly participants in a proactive media campaign designed to discredit Lively, accusing Lively of having fabricated claims that defendants knew to be contemporaneously documented and genuinely held is the definition of actual malice. There was a lot there. It's a lot of explaining, and I still go, I mean, they even say it here. Thus, there is ample evidence. Okay. Let's see. I'm still I want more detail. I want more detail. Is that too much to ask? I thought the point of this was to drop a lot of those receipts. MC says, claiming the MJP recycled arguments in the MSJ's bizarre given the MJP was filed months before the MSJ. Can't say it better than that. Yeah. And I think we're finally to the last couple pages. Oh, okay. We're so close. Okay. Oh, this has been so helpful, truly, for me to feel into what is it like to live stream more. Welcome to the full moon in Gemini. Like building up the capacity to read, to talk, to analyze, to connect, to do so much more of this. So appreciate all of you hanging out, hanging in there, doing this with me. It makes it so much more entertaining for me too, and enjoyable to get through this process. So, and Zane says they're doing too much shocking and not enough showing. I'm like, I know, yeah, I agree. I want to see things. I'm very open to seeing things. Very, very open to seeing things. And then Kealohali says, I wonder what Ryan said to defame Justin and to who he said it to. Yeah, didn't that come up? Did that come up in their recent response? I thought I saw something about a Wayfarer recent response to the spoliation sanctions that they basically said, yeah, we uncovered some very clear, what they're saying is evidence that Reynolds defamed Baldoni. We just don't know what that is. MC says, my natal moon is in Gemini, lol. Well, that just makes so much sense with the, like, your attention to detail. Do you know where do you know where that is in your chart? What house it's in? Yeah. Coming with the deets. MC, coming with the deets. Okay. Defendants are not entitled to summary judgment on the conspiracy claim. Lively's conspiracy claim functions as an alternative theory of liability on her non-conspiracy claims. As evident from the underlying claims, Lively has alleged 1, civil conspiracy to retaliate under Title VII FEHA and the California Labor Code against IEWM and Wayfarer. 2, conspiracy to commit false light to Wayfarer, Baldoni, Heath, Sarowitz, Nathan, Tag, and Abel. 3, conspiracy to commit defamation per se, against Wayfarer, Baldoni, and Heath. The record evidence establishes that the Wayfarer defendants agreed to a common scheme to retaliate against Lively that included placing her in a false light and defaming her. 1 or more of the Wayfarer defendants acted intentionally and overtly in furtherance of that scheme, and harm resulted. That is all that is required for a jury to conclude that the defendants conspired to commit the civil wrongs. Does anyone know what this means? Like, what is... This is where my understanding of civil conspiracy, like I just, this is way above my head. At this point, I'm just reading this to complete this because I am a completionist. He said, your moon in Gemini is in your 3rd house. So that would be, oh, and then you said, sorry, moon is in 7th. Wait, MC. So if your moon in Gemini is in your 7th, according to whole sign houses, that would put Sagittarius in your 1st, like your ascendant in Sagittarius in your 1st. I am also Sagittarius rising. So does that check out with your chart? If so, it makes me appreciate you that much more. I'm like, oh, I get it. Another Sag rising. I'm just reading the comments. Sorry, I'm fading so bad. Substitutions allowed has entered the chat. I think just going through the writings shows the experience of dealing with certain parties. That alone says a lot about who these people are, the plaintiffs, their own lawyers. Yeah, I'm over it. I'm over the legalese. I need just, what is the TLDR? Is that what the kids say? Just give me the summary, because this is all just mush in my brain at this point. Okay, the last little bit, we are talking about Sarowitz. The MSJ's attempt to cast Sarowitz as an aloof financier cannot be squared with the record. Sarowitz is a close confidant and friend of Baldoni and Heath, and is Wayfarer's co-chairman. And what could be redacted there? And this is now at least the third time in this MSJ that they've used, I think, that word friend in the context of these relationships. They're really trying to, I mean, why is that? Is they're just trying to say, because they have more of a personal relationship, that they're more willing to cover for each other. He was intimately aware of the complaints of SH at the time they occurred, visited the set, participated in the promotion of the film, knowingly paid for Wayfarer Studios' public relations and crisis services used to carry out the retaliatory campaign, and personally drafted negative narratives about Lively. Personally drafted negative narratives, and yet they are redacted. I want to see that. What is that? What are they saying connects Sarowitz directly? Is because it says personally drafted. And also that's interesting that they're using the word drafted. So was this something that they discovered through discovery that was never put out publicly? Because when I hear drafted, I immediately think something's been written. But it was drafted, and yet we can't see what it is. Okay, Sarowitz's attempt to minimize his involvement is controverted by his own documents. So that also suggests something written, notwithstanding their limited nature due to a failure to preserve. So is this related to the signal messages, what they think was written in the signal messages? MCC. I'm sure she's calling drafting negative narratives as sending texts that are negative about her. I mean, that's very possible. Like drafting, it says, yeah, something. Could it be text messages? If there are text messages like that, I think that the public would like to know to make their own evaluation. Okay. And substitution says, don't get down on yourself. They're excellent shorts, 30 minutes or less, that explain the professional interpretations. Yeah. We've talked a lot about Not Actually Golden and Little Girl Attorney. Defer to them on all legal things. Yeah. That's, watch the law interpretations. You can focus on how it relates to the astrological readings. That's the next step for me, is like, okay, of all this information that we have uncovered, are there any particular dates that I want to take into some sort of astrology analysis? There were a couple that stood out to me. Let me know in the chat live, or if you're watching this on replay, if you get this far, or appreciate you being here. I am curious if there are any dates that we've mentioned or that you've come across in this MSJ that you're intrigued by. For me, I'm really curious about that December, I think it was December 14th date, 2022, when Justin Baldoni actually met with Blake Lively before she agreed to be Lily Bloom. I'd be curious about the astrological context for that. I've done some analysis on some of those early allegations, right? Pre-production time period, the spring of 2023. I might go back and look at those again, the May and April dates. Those are kind of the major ones that stood out to me. Yes. And on that note, we are to the final paragraph. And then our one sentence conclusion, which I think is kind of funny. Maybe that's my delirium, finding it humorous, but I do find it a little funny. Okay, the Wayfarer parties wrongly argue that Lively lacks standing to seek damages for lost profits and royalties from her businesses because she is an indirect shareholder and lost profits are too speculative. Lively does not purport to bring derivative shareholder claims on behalf of the companies, but rather is seeking damages to her own business reputation in connection with her own legal claims. And then there's some case law cited. For this same reason, the defendant's authority addressing speculative lost profits is inopposite, but even if they were not, Lively's losses associated with Blake Brown and Betty Boos are rooted in detailed financial projections prepared by experienced business leaders based on industry experience and actual sales figures, which we still don't have the details of. Like if this goes to trial, I'd be really curious. You know, what stands out to me is, how many sentences is this? When it comes to the actual damages, financial damages of all of this, right? The SH, the retaliation, what are the actual damages? We have 1 sentence, 2 sentence. I'm not going to count the case law sentence because it's just case law. We have 3 sentences. 3 sentences out of this entire document addressing the financial claims. Yeah. An MC saying, I have no idea what damages to her own business reputation even means. Yeah, it's a very generic statement. Or these companies' figures or projections would be necessary to prove them. I agree. And this is where, because of my business consulting background, and I talked about this on a live stream a little bit ago, even the information that has been provided outside of the MSJ previously around the estimated financial damages to I'm specifically talking to her business ventures with Blake Brown and Betty Boos. They're incredibly, incredibly generic, those figures. And there's no detail around how they got to that estimate. So I would imagine that if this goes to trial, and they really are trying to establish those figures and justify those figures, they'd have to provide more information. I would love to see that. I'd be very curious to see how they got to those estimates. We are finally at the conclusion. Defendant's motion for summary judgment should be denied. Okay, that's it. That's it. We did it. We did it. We did it. We did it. Happy Friday. This has been quite the experiment. What do you think? You already started to share a little bit. MSJ, should it go through? What do you think will survive? I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. MC, coming with the details, MC. Do you happen to know when we would anticipate knowing the judge's decision on this? I can't recall. I'm guessing that's going to be, because now that Blake Lively has responded to the Wayfarer parties, they get a reply, right? From what I understand. And that reply won't be like a huge document like the one we just went through. I think it'll be a much shorter document. And then after that, do the Lively parties get another response, or does it just go right to the judge for decision? Because what I'm trying to understand is timeline. Because my theory has been that things will start to heat up in January. Because that's when all the energy, will really start to heat up in the sign of Capricorn. And MC says we won't get the judge's decision until January. He said he won't give a ruling until everything is unsealed to the public, and the deadline for that is in January. Is that the January 9th date? Because that's another. I haven't looked in depth at January yet. I was glancing at it the other day. But that'll be interesting to see. So, okay, we'll just have to hang in there for a while longer. The month of December might be interesting to see. I thought Sadie, I hear her. I don't know. Babies, where are you? I thought Sadie was going to come say hi. I heard her like snort behind my curtain. And then she's like, peace out. I'm done. Let's see what everyone else is saying. Kilo Haley says, I think Blake is going to want to keep everything sealed longer. Yeah, I think there's going to be a push for delaying that. So that would line up with still being in the Mercury retrograde shadow and integration until January before things start, more details come out. MC says, yes, January 9th is when the unsealing fight ends. Sometime after that, everything gets unsealed. And then he'll issue a ruling. I need to look again at January and February astrology and see when our new moon and full moon are happening that month. Yes. I know. Hey, Sadie. See ya. Okay, guys. I think. Oh, we've got someone else entering the chat. Sunshine. Blake would prefer to keep everything sealed permanently. I mean, if this proceeds, she can't though, right? I mean, not to the extent all that has been redacted. I mean, I could see an argument for keeping some things redacted. I mean, that's appropriate, right? There are reasons to have redactions, but that much redacted, I just can't see. I agree with you that's what she would want. MC says that she can't. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. Anything else, guys? Thank you so much for being on this marathon with me for the MSJ. I think what I will do is my next step is to look at some of those unsealed depositions. And instead of reading those live, because there's so many of them, I will see if anything comes up that seems relevant based on the astrology. And we'll go back to our regularly scheduled programming for everything. And yes, have a great weekend, everyone. And stay tuned because I will be traveling a little bit this month. So live streams I might kind of be morphing a little bit into some of this spontaneous live stream stuff. I'll do my best to let you know ahead of time when possible. Otherwise, I will just I kind of enjoyed the last couple of days being able to make a decision on the spot. Hey, let's live stream now. So there might be some more of that. I'm trying to relax some of my perfectionistic tendencies to be like, I must have a plan. We must do it this way. And instead just go with the flow a little bit. So we'll wrap it up here. Well, let me see if Sadie will say hello. Hold on. Also, I wore red today because some of you said you really liked the red. So I was like, what's something red I can wear? We got a Sadie babes. Oh, we got a Sadie babes. I wish you could smell her. Is that weird to say? If you're like a dog, she sees herself on the screen. If you're a dog parent, maybe you can relate. Ever since I brought her home when she was just a tiny little nugget, she just had a particular smell. I know it's so weird to say. I imagine like humans may feel that way about human children sometimes too. For her, I'm like, oh my God, you're just so stinky. You're so stinky and gross, but you are just my baby. And I love how you smell. Okay, so you got your Sadie moment. Bye. Oh, and I appreciate you saying that, MC, to reading this through. Yeah. I mean, I'm open to doing more, so let me know. Let me know if you want me to read more live.
Happy to do it. I'm going to go intervene with Sadie because she's going to be having a tantrum. And yes, scent is like a baby's. I know. I'm like, you're so stinky. You're so stinky sometimes, but I just love you so much. Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And I look forward to connecting again soon.